Hi, I'm Malika Bilal, filling in for Femi OK, and you're in the stream. Today, in just a few years, your job will likely be done by robots. As machines get more intelligent, what impact will they have on the human labor force of the future? Our digital producer, Omar Badar, is here looking out for all of your live feedback. So let's be real. 5 to 10 years, if the stream is still on the air, and of course it will be, do you think robots will be doing our jobs?
No, I can tell you that a robot can probably read teleprompter better than I could, so that much is for sure. But I think as long as there's demand for these blooper reels on YouTube of anchors and presenters falling off their chairs and fumbling, I think our jobs are probably safe.
We're safe.
Yep, and we have some support actually online here from Kayla on Twitter, who says, I wouldn't like to see this show taken over by robots. Thank you so much, Kayla, for the support. As long as you're there for us, hopefully we'll be okay. Then we have Keith over here who says, I remember when the first robots were developed in the 60s, scientists and politicians were saying that within 20 years, no one would have to work and we'd all have lives of leisure. That obviously came true, didn't it? Well, Keith, if you want to give up on that, that's up to you, but I'm still holding on to that. Folks at home, you can tweet us using the hashtag AJStream to join this conversation, and we'll try to get to those tweets during the show.
I'm looking forward to what's coming in already. Now, that's one hashtag. Here are some other hashtags the stream is following. Check them out.
The first jobs to be impacted by technology are the most routine jobs. Routine clerical work, for example, or standing on an assembly line. What we're left with are lower skilled jobs that tend to require lots of dexterity and visual perception. And then at the other end, we've got these high skilled jobs that really require advanced cognitive type skills. But I think that what we're seeing over time is that both of those poles are gradually being impacted as well. So it is essentially that hollowed out middle will get bigger and bigger over time.
That was author Martin Ford in a clip from the People and Power film Tech Threat, running now on Al Jazeera English. Automation creeping into the labor market isn't a new phenomenon. People have feared it since the Industrial Revolution. Historically, jobs under threat were those that involved lower skills and repetitive motion. But as we just saw, machines are getting more intelligent, and the prospect of them performing human-only tasks is not so far in the future. In fact, some academics are predicting that by 2040, almost half of current jobs in the United States could be automated. Today, robots are writing news articles, they're designing buildings and driving cars more safely than ever before. So as technology improves, will it actually lead to widespread human unemployment and further economic inequality? Well, to discuss that and a lot more, from California, I'm joined by Vivek Wadhwa. He is President of Innovation and Research at Singularity University and a fellow at the Rock Center for Corporate Governance at Stanford University. From Philadelphia, Katie Sipp is a union organizer and the creator of Hack the Union. It's a blog about work, tech, and organizing. In North Carolina, Robbie Allen is the CEO of Automated Insights, a company that developed Wordsmith, a program that turns data into news stories. And also in North Carolina, Marshall Brain is the founder of the How Stuff Works website. His new book is The Second Intelligent Species, How Humans Will Become as Irrelevant as Cockroaches. Welcome everybody to the stream. Now, Marshall, with a title like that, I have to start with you. You heard that phrase from the film, a hollowed out middle that gets bigger and bigger. Do you think we're going to see an entire middle class unemployed?
Absolutely. The second intelligent species is what we're creating right now. We're in the process of eventually replicating human intelligence in silicon. And as that happens, and as the silicon intelligence gets more and more powerful, then the middle class and the low end and the high end are all going to be able to see their jobs disappear.
Vivek, who do you think will be the most affected by this?
I think that it's going to be good and bad, because for these jobs to disappear, we have to have automation everywhere. When you have automation everywhere, the prices of everything begin dropping, and which means we can afford all the basic necessities. We have all the food we need. We'll have all the buildings we need. We'll have, robotic AI-based doctors. So all of our needs will be taken care of. The question is, what do we do with ourselves? Now, that's a different discussion we can have, but the fact is that we're getting there whether we like it or not, and I think it's going to be for the better of mankind. We don't need to be working 100 hours a week like we did in the old days.
And we have people online who are skeptical of the idea that machines would take over. So we have Peter over here with an awesome profile picture, by the way, on Facebook, who says, I don't see them taking over jobs that require human-to-human contact because people will always need that human interaction. But Malika, when I think of certain things that required human interaction at some point, you go to a grocery store or a bank, there was a time when you interacted with someone, but these days it seems like it's all done through a machine.
Right.
So I'm actually curious, Katie, do you think that there are certain kinds of jobs that actually will always require human interaction?
I don't know that I think that there will be always jobs that require human interaction. I think that I think that we will continue to have jobs that are augmented by technology, whether that's through physical technology like robotic suits, exosuits, things like that, or by things like artificial intelligence, the kind of doctor in a box that we were talking about earlier. But I don't know that the essence of human interaction is the thing that's going to keep people employed.
Well, on a small scale, what we're talking about is actually already happening, as Omar mentioned, being at the grocery store or the bank. But I want to show you another example. So we're going to do a live Google News search right now. Popped up Google on my website. And right now, I'm typing in, this story was generated by Automated Insights. Now, Robbie, of course, this is your company. And when I put this in, I get several news results, 1,500, more than 1,500 really, that pop up in under 28 seconds. There's technology for you. So this is happening. This is your everyday, Robbie. What do you see the benefits of having a product, really, that can write a news story? And should I, as a journalist, be worried?
No, it's a great question, and it's something I'm asked all the time. I don't think you have to be worried. In fact, what automation enables us to do is to provide coverage on a broader scale than what was possible before. So it's not that we're replacing what people used to do. In fact, in most of the examples in which we work, we're actually creating content where it didn't exist before.
And we have people echoing that sentiment. We have Joah here on Facebook who says, there's no need to worry. Jobs have been created after the introduction of calculators, computers, the internet. Technology will free up resources to think of bigger projects that will then require more people to be employed in these fields. And we have Akil over here who says, there's no worry at all. Weren't they warning since the 80s that this could happen, saying humans adapt more jobs building robots and possibly blogging about machines taking over? Although judging by the kind of work that Robbie does, maybe machines will be better at writing these things as well. But Marshall, do you think that these new technologies could then open up room for more jobs that we haven't seen yet?
Well, the question would be, what are those new jobs going to be? If we're creating a second intelligent species that is going to eventually reach parity with humans and then exceed human capabilities, what jobs are we going to create? And if you think about it, do you ever hear an entrepreneur say, I have developed a new technology that is going to cause more jobs to get created? Or is it far more common for the entrepreneur to say, I'm making things more efficient by eliminating these people on your payroll? And there's just no entrepreneurs out there with a product that creates jobs right now.
Vivek, you look like you have a response to that.
Yeah, I mean, I think that one of the...
Vivek and Katie, I love it. Katie, you go first, and we'll hear from Vivek
Katie,
after.
you go first, please.
Thank you. One of the things that I would say is, we haven't really dealt with the surplus labor that it has existed since the Industrial Revolution. And I work in the city of Philadelphia, which is the poorest big city in the United States of America. And that's a city that still has 14% unemployment in the Black community. So I think that, there is this sort of back and forth in this subject area about, are we going to have, more jobs or less jobs? But we're also not dealing with the reality that we still have a pretty significant gap in certain parts of the United States and certainly in other parts of the world where, people were displaced by the Industrial Revolution and we haven't figured out a way to use them yet. I do believe that the digital revolution will speed that up, and we will end up with more labor surplus than we currently have.
Katie's right. The argument always is that we figured it out before, that we created new jobs in previous eras. That look at agriculture. At one stage, 98% of our population was in agriculture and whatever. The problem is that we created jobs for the next generation. We created jobs for children who were differently educated, who were differently trained than the parents were. Entire generations of people were unemployed. And that's what's going to happen now, because technology is on an exponential curve. It's no longer linear. If it was linear, it would be happening over decades. Now it's happening over years. In fact, I think that estimate you cited of half the jobs disappearing by 2040 was wrong. It's actually closer to 2030, not 2040, because things are on this exponential curve, and we will not be able to retrain the workforce, just like what Katie described, that we haven't retrained all of these unemployed workers in Middle America yet, because they don't understand the new technologies that are happening. Even the technologists don't understand the new technologies that are happening. I mean, I have to go to how stuff works to figure out how AI works and how some of these fields work. This is how fast things are changing.
A little shout out from Marshall there.
There's a key point. There's a key point here. Yeah, there's a key point here is, I'm much more optimistic about our future. I think it's going to be, at least for the next 100 years, it's going to be much more of a humans plus machines to make the world a better place. I think
that's linear thinking, my friend. You're trying to defend the jobs you're taking away. You know as well as I do that things are moving faster than you think, and it's easy for you to say this because you're getting slammed for saying you're taking people's jobs away. So you say we'll figure it out. It's not going to happen. We are decimating.
No, it's also really easy to say that jobs are going to be taken away. I mean, again,
but they are being
there's
taken
really
away.
no proof. It's really easy to say exponential thinking, and I know that's a very popular way to describe it. That's not what I'm seeing. I see a lot of people worried about it. What I see is a humans plus software making this happen. We're still a long ways away from software just being able to work independently on its own. It still requires humans to configure and program those systems.
Robbie,
not to say that won't happen anytime soon, but it's not going to be in the next 10 or even 15
We
years.
actually have people online who are debating that particular point of what the time frame that we're looking at. You have Ali Mayeho here who says this will take many years to replace the human labor by machines. Thus, humans can still take part in the labor force until they figure this stuff out. But on the other hand, Noura says, with fast development and novel innovations in technology, I'm afraid that machines will be taking over my job and not in the so distant future. Marshall, what's your take? What's the time frame that we have right now to deal with this?
Well, if you look at the singularity aspect, which there are more qualified panelists to talk about, the human brain is thought to require about a petaflop of operations per second to do its thing. And we'll have desktop machines that can reach that level in 10 years, 20 years, probably.
2023, my friend, is when we get
there. There you go.
Right.
And as that happens...
Right.
Marshall,
go ahead,
continue.
Katie.
Go ahead.
As that happens, we're going to have $500 machines on our desktops with human equivalent processing power, and then it's just an algorithm problem. So as we develop the algorithms, the platform's going to be there, and the algorithms will run, and we will have human-level capabilities in the second intelligent species, 2023, 2030. That is completely imaginable in today's scenario.
Well, we're talking about the time frame for this. I want to play a clip of something that kind of shows how soon some of this technology might be available. So this is a clip from the film Tech Threat, and in it, David Hall, the CEO of a self-driving car technology company, explains what industry he thinks might be the first to go. So, Katie, have a listen to this.
Having somebody drive a taxi cab is kind of a waste of talent, to be honest with you, because you can have them doing something more intelligent than that. And so what's the value for someone driving a car? It's just wasted time. And suppose they were busy, productive. So no, this is all for the better. This is just a tragedy the way cars run now. It's barbaric, it's stupid, and you just have to reinvent the transportation process.
So, Katie, you hear strong words, barbaric, stupid. You work with unions, and unions, of course, are what make up truck driver unions, of course. So what do you think about what will happen to those jobs? Where will those truck drivers go, those cab drivers?
Well, I mean, to me, the interesting question of this debate isn't what will be the time frame that it takes to get to a place where many fewer humans are needed to have jobs, but when are we going to start articulating demands in the economic justice movement that deal with the digital revolution and not the industrial revolution? So, it took the labor movement both globally and in the United States something along the lines of 200 years to win the 8-hour day. Right? So it doesn't really matter if you're at the very beginning of the Industrial Revolution or at the end of the revolution, you're in the position of working a 12-hour day, sometimes 6 or 7 days a week for most of that period of time. So I'm kind of interested in what are the things that we can say moving forward that are going to actually articulate demands for what we want our economy to look like when we get to a place when many fewer people are needed to be employed.
Marshall?
I agree. That's a discussion we need to be having. I mean, Katie, you're hitting it on the nail on the head over here, because if we deny that this is happening, we're going to put off the important discussions about what do we do about it. Sorry, go ahead.
So then let's have that conversation. What do we do about it?
Katie?
Well, I mean, I think that, there's obviously a sort of a discussion, that has come up in the past and continues to sort of bubble up about what a universal basic income would look like. I mean, we have sort of, a couple of different possible futures. We have a future where we share prosperity. We say productivity has gained enormously. We've seen since the 1970s that productivity and wages have stopped being linked together. For a long time, post-industrial revolution, wages went up, productivity went up, and wages went up with them. And you can argue about what the rationale was, why that stopped being the case. But the reality is, for most of my life, that hasn't been the case. So what are we going to do with the gains that we get from productivity increases if we're not putting them directly into the pockets of workers? And I think that, as I enter into this debate with a lot of folks in the technology community, I often get accused of being afraid of technology. And I'm not afraid. I love technology. And part of the reason that I got interested in this topic in the first place was I'm an early adopter of things, and I think it's exciting, and I want to not work 40 hours a week anymore. But I also think that what people are really afraid of, what workers are afraid of, is poverty. And that's a bigger problem to fix than just, are we going to have self-driving cars or not? Or will we still have taxi drivers, or will we still have people, driving FedEx trucks?
Yep, Katie, on that big picture, we have people also weighing in. We have Thomas here on Facebook who says, until ownership and control of the means of production is in the hands of workers, they will always be in competition with technology, not beneficiaries of it. And then we have this video comment from Zachary. Take a listen to this.
Efficiency gains for firms don't directly translate to welfare gains for economies and for workers. Robots might not go on strike or take sick leave, but neither do they earn incomes and spend money on goods and services. Economic circulation depends upon wage earners also being consumers. Unless smart social policies are put in place to ensure that displaced workers can access better jobs and better incomes, robotics threatens to increase socioeconomic inequality and depress aggregate demand.
So, Marshall, do you agree that capitalism cannot handle this advancement that's coming?
Right now, the way the society and the economy is wired is all of the gains are going to the 1% or the 0.1%, however you want to talk about it. We can see this statistically. We know it from our wages. And what's so exciting about the robotic revolution that's going to happen is that we could create a society where everybody could go on perpetual vacation. And that, when you think about truck drivers, there's going to be 1 million or 2 million truck drivers who are out of their jobs in 2 years. And as Katie said, their prospects are poverty. There's not going to be a thing for those 2 million truck drivers to do. So if we instead had a system in our society that allowed those people to then go on perpetual vacation, then they would be really excited about losing their jobs, not in depression about it, and not headed toward sleeping on their neighbor's couch or something worse. And that's the thing society has to start to understand.
Hey, Marshall.
Ultimately, I have a point here.
Go ahead, Robbie.
Ultimately, I think this comes back to a training and education issue. So regardless of, we could debate when it's going to happen and how quickly robotics and software will take over the world. I firmly believe that even if we have the computing power, that won't necessarily mean that we have the software necessary to replace all the jobs that everyone on the panel is talking about. I mean, for all the talk that we've had, the primary conversation is about replacing drivers. That's one of the least skilled jobs in the industry. It's not the very skilled jobs that are going to be much more difficult to automate. So I ultimately believe that there's going to be a gap. And again, we can debate how long that gap will be of, well, software can start to do the job, but still requires human involvement. It still requires human configuration. And ultimately, what we're finding, especially in the workforce and when it comes to artificial intelligence and a lot of the areas that we're working, there is just not enough people. There's a lack of good talent to fill that role of whether it's programming systems or configuring systems. And so that's where we need to focus on, is trying to come up with ways that enable people that can help bridge this gap. Again, I'm not arguing at some point maybe software becomes much more dominant. We're not anywhere close to that. And in the meantime, we need people to help us get there, and we need better trained people, because there's not enough programmers in the world. Right. There's not enough people that understand data.
I think that's true, although I also think that there is a pretty big gap between somebody who spent 30 years of their life driving a truck, or we've seen in the US lately a lot of activity by fast food workers who, you can see directly where the fast food industry has been deeply affected by software in particular. And I'm not just talking about McDonald's buying tablets for people to order stuff from. I'm also talking about scheduling, right? Because one of the things that started to happen, particularly in the retail and fast food industries, is that as the function of scheduling has become more and more automated, workers are needed less. So what it means is that even in industries where workers are going to, go to work every day still for the foreseeable future, I don't think that we're going to get to a place, in the next 5 years where there's a McDonald's that literally doesn't have a single human employee in it. We might get to that place sometime further down the line, but the industry is saying we're using the productivity advantage that we can get from scheduling to have people at work for fewer and fewer hours. And that means, but they're not raising the wages. They're not saying, okay, and we're going to give you a bonus for being a person who shows up every time we need you. They're using that technology to drive people who are already low-wage workers further into poverty, and they're not doing it in a way that actually provides them a way out of that poverty through training and education.
So I want to posit, Katie here, I hear what you're saying, and I want to posit an alternative, because a lot of this conversation seems to often focus on the doomsday and the worst case scenario. So I want to take a look at my computer here. This is a tweet. This is IBM Watson. Of course, that is a computing technology that processes information more like a human does in a computer. And in this tweet, it says, finding oncology treatment options can take weeks. IBM Watson can provide a recommendation in minutes. If I'm a cancer patient, this is exactly what I want. This is what I want technology to do for me. And my question with this, Vivek, is this the future? Because you'll need a doctor then to translate those results, but you have the computing robot behind the scenes doing that heavy lifting.
You'll need a doctor for now. Initially, the IBM Watson will be an assistant to an oncologist who will take the advice, who will consider the advice of IBM Watson. Within 5 or 10 years, when Watson is 100 times better than any human doctors are, doctors will fear not taking the advice of Watson because they'll get sued if anything goes wrong. So therefore, Watson will now become the decider of what treatment you get. The doctor will become less relevant. We'll have robotic surgery. If you look at Intuitive Surgical, they've got some amazing robotic surgeons which still require human beings. Give it 15 years, and if I had to get surgery, I would trust a robot to operate on me than a human being any day, because the human being gets distracted, the human being gets drunk, the human being gets tired. The robotic surgeon will not. And robotic surgeons are not that far away as you might think they are.
Well,
you can go field after field after field.
You heard it here first, Vivek. I'm going to pause you. They're not that far away. We're going to continue that in the post show. And I hear Marshall laughing, so we'll get his thoughts on that as well. I want last words, though, from our community and what they're thinking.
We have Lennon here who has a kind of a depressed outlook, saying things are going to get really bad with human wars versus machine wars. And then we have Imali over here who's more inspired, saying robots are mechanically programmed, but humans are intellectually inspired.
And remember, you can watch the full documentary on aljazeera.com Tech Threat. Now, here's a peek at what's coming up on Wednesday's show. 795 million people around the world don't have enough to eat. At close to half of all the food produced worldwide is thrown away. We'll talk to activists who are fighting #food waste. Till then, we'll see you online. Welcome back. Now, as automation creeps into the labor market, what impact will it have on jobs and job security in the future? Let's get right back to that conversation. We were discussing the future of robots in the hospitals. Vivek was saying that it's really not that far away. And Marshall looked like he wanted to pipe in on that conversation. Marshall?
Well, from the beginning, we would love to get rid of human doctors as an economy.
I'm sorry, Marshall, who is we? I quite prefer having a human. Vivek would like
I'll take a robot any day.
Really? What about the bedside manner? If you're getting bad news or you are getting something that is difficult to digest, Marshall, Vivek,
really,
you want that from a robot?
To visit the orthopedist who
My
treated
doctor doesn't really know who I am. He just sees me for 5 or 10 minutes, looks at some hand scribbled notes, pretends to know who I am, and then prescribes the same medications to every human being that comes along. The AI will know everything about me. He'll know my life history. He'll have my DNA, my genomics information. He'll have information about hundreds of millions of billions of other people, and he'll be up to date on the latest advances as they happen. My doctor, when
by the way, tone's programmable. I mean,
Robbie?
The tone's completely programmable. Right. You can make the doctor, funny. You can make him sarcastic. You can make him, whatever you want it to be. That won't be a limit.
Because that's already what you're doing with your articles, right? You have an algorithm that makes them in the script, of course, that the company might want. So it could be sarcastic, it could be humorous.
Sure. That's right.
Well, the reason we would like to get rid of robots, just think about it economically. They're super expensive. They work 8 hours a day, and then they're closed when you need them in the evening.
And they drink a lot in the evening.
They can't keep up with everything that's happening. As Vivek said, there's no way they can be as good as an artificial intelligence in terms of current events and current treatments and all the side effects and your particular DNA and all these things. So the healthcare sector, it takes huge amounts of money out of the economy. If you could just roboticize all of that, it would be fantastic. It's just that the robot or the doctors are going to take the collateral damage for that, because they're not going to be doctor jobs anymore, or nurse jobs, or technician jobs, and that whole sector is going to be much better, but no employees.
Yep. Yeah, no, I mean, I spent my most recent history in working in a union, working for a healthcare workers union, and the robot pharmacist has been around in some hospitals already for 5 years, and they're going to get better. I mean, right now you still need to have an actual licensed pharmacist to dispense the prescriptions, but it's a bot that brings them around from floor to floor, and not even in the cities. It's sometimes in more rural places where that's a more cost-effective way of that happening. So I totally agree. We are going to have a huge disruption.
That, Katie. I actually want to show our viewers what that looks like. So this is Niels Jørg Jacobsen. He's the Chief Technology Officer of Mobile Industrial Robots. That's in Denmark. And he told the stream about the advantages of their robotic technology in hospitals and in factories. So take a look at this.
So what it does is it moves stuff from one place to another. And it's normally teachers' jobs that people are doing all the time today. Our biggest challenge is actually for people to realize that this is a product that's available today. This is not some DARPA or science fiction. It's just something where you can go and buy. And we have had companies where we have set it up, and within an hour, you're up and running. It's just like having a new employee. You just show it around in the building, and he has done his own map, and then he's ready to operate together with you.
I saw some of our guests nodding our heads at that. That's exactly how I want, personally, my robots to intermix with my medical assistants. I know people online probably have their own views on this.
We have somebody here who doesn't necessarily look at the doctor specifically, but Neil says only social things like sports people, shopkeepers, hairdressers, not for technical reasons, but for cultural reasons, these jobs cannot be taken over by machines. But then we have Sally Mae Sucks here, hilarious name, by the way, who says also any job that requires compassion. Robots are good at logic, but that's not all there is to it. Vivek, things like taking care of babies or the elders, things that require some level of compassion, do you think machines can actually be programmed to do this just as well as people could?
Not yet, but give it 20 years or so and we can have that discussion again. In the meantime, those are very few jobs. We're talking about the vast majority of jobs disappearing, not all of them. That's what we have to keep in mind.
Robbie,
I think the key point here is, yeah, I mean, virtually anything can and will be programmed. You know, again, if it's the tone in which that you express your feelings, that can be programmed. Compassion, in some ways, I could argue that it would be much better to have a compassionate robot than it would be to have a compassionate human, because sometimes, you know, if you've been with an elderly person for many, many years, you know, that starts to grind on you after a while. And with a robot, there is no concept of getting worn out. To me, the biggest question is just how long is it going to take? There's others that think it's going to happen, you know, conceivably in 10 to 20 years. I think it's going to take a little bit longer, not necessarily because we don't have the computing power to do it. There is a human element that's going to have to make this happen. All this software is not going to get written by itself. Robots are not writing software, at least yet. This has to be done by people. And so that's why I think it's still going to take time for this stuff to develop, because there has to be interest in those industries for you know, entrepreneurs to create software around it. There has to be the money to back those companies. So all this stuff is going to happen eventually. It's just a matter of how long is that going to take.
Vivek, I'm wondering if this means that we're going to have to restructure laws, if there are liabilities that are hidden really in this that we're not even considering.
This is the point that Kate was bringing up earlier also, Katie, that there are many discussions we need to be having about the impact of these technologies. If we're still debating whether it's happening or not, we're missing out on the chance to be solving the problems. You know, where I live in Silicon Valley, what worries me is that as these people become billionaires, they become what they call themselves libertarians. Libertarians means they don't want to pay taxes. You have one billionaire here who's paying children not to go to school because he doesn't think that a cocktail waiter needs to have a chemistry degree. I mean, this is the sort of mindset that you're seeing from some of the newly minted billionaires. So this is what really worries me, is technology is advancing exponentially, but is humanity advancing? Mm-hmm. Can we advance our ideals? Can we come to this world in which we share the prosperity? We need to start thinking about it right now, because we're getting there whether we like it or not. It's happening at light speed, whether we're ready or not.
Just to look at a slightly bigger picture of this, we have people who are bringing in the idea of how this affects the entire globe. So we have Gopi over here who says the majority of the global population is still far from reaping the benefits of advancements in artificial intelligence and technology. And then we have Omaru over here who says this need for faster technological advancement will increase the number of unemployment in developed states. Katie, do you want to take a stab at how this might affect developed states versus developing states, whether there might be some reshoring of jobs that went overseas that could come back to developed states?
I mean, I think that that will happen in a very minor way. I'm not going to say that it won't happen. But again, I go back to, you know, I work in a city that has experienced an enormous amount of disruption. Philadelphia used to be the sort of workshop of the world. That was actually the name of, you know, the sort of nickname of the city at one point. And there were hundreds, literally hundreds of different kinds of factories. All different kinds of stuff got made in Philly for the US. And the beginning of economic disruption in Philly wasn't about going to, you know, other countries. It was really jobs moved from Philadelphia to the American South, where there were either less unions or weaker unions, but, you know, the garment jobs. I mean, my grandmother was a garment worker in Philadelphia and in Camden, New Jersey. And that is just a job that, you know, there's a handful of factories that still produce clothes in the city of Philadelphia right now. But by and large, those jobs went away when I was in my girlhood, and they then left the South and went to other countries. But I don't think that we're going to see, you know, suddenly people starting to bring back large-scale garment manufacturing to the city of Philadelphia anytime soon. I do think one thing that we haven't really talked about too much on this show is, you know, 3D printing and what effect that'll have on the economy, especially when it comes to manufacturing. I do think that we will start to see sort of, you know, custom-made things that people start to do locally again. But I don't know that, you know, like, is the Gap bringing back all of their jeans manufacture to the United States? It seems unlikely to me.
Excellent question.
They'll do that. They'll do that once we eliminate the need for humans to operate a sewing machine. Right. That's the one thing that hasn't been automated yet. And as soon as we have a vision system that lets a robot sew jeans together, Gap will come back, but they will need no employees to do it.
Hey, Yumi can do that, by the way. Yumi from ABB, they announced a robot about 2 months ago, which can now thread a needle, by the way.
There you go. Like sewing is one of those things that just has been very difficult to automate, but it will get cracked in 10 years,
but it was
15.
The Luddites, right? They were it was the weaving industry and the garment work that, sort of gave us the term that we use for people who are opposed to technology from 200 years ago. Those were the Luddites, were people who smashed looms.
I want to leave us with a tweet. This is full disclosure on my own experience with technology and a personal assistant that I have in my home. I tweeted this out yesterday just to give a taste of what this future looks like. So we can have a look here.
Alexa, what's on my schedule for Tuesday?
Tomorrow there is one event. At 3:30 p.m. there's Host the Stream, the episode on robots.
Alexa, what's the weather like on Tuesday?
Weather alert for Washington. There's a flash flood watch until 6 a.m. Tuesday, June 2nd. Here's the forecast for Tuesday, June 2nd. Look for thunderstorms with a high of 70 and a low of 62.
Alexa, what's the traffic?
The fastest route takes about 13 minutes. Via Massachusetts Avenue Northwest and M Street Northwest.
At times I find it creepy that I have a being in my home called Alexa. At other times it's super convenient, but I think it might be the future.
Listening to everything you're saying, probably.
Exactly, yeah, exactly.
Yeah, we have closing thoughts here from Kennedy. You have Emerging Equity saying, what a paradox, our technology development started acting against us. But we have somebody who's more hopeful. Robotics News says, people initially fear losing their jobs. However, over a period of time, automation will lead to no jobs or different jobs, adding, in the end, there's no such thing as money, war, famine, hunger, or anything else. I'm a little bit afraid of the anything else. I'm happy with the no money, war, or famine.
Slightly utopia, but we'll see. Unfortunately, that's all the time we have for this conversation today, but I want to thank my guests, Vivek Wadhwa, Katie Sipp, Marshall Braid, and Robbie Allen. Now, Omar and I will be back on Wednesday to talk about hashtag food waste. 795 million people around the world don't have enough food to eat, yet close to half of all the food produced worldwide is thrown away each year. We'll be talking to activists who are fighting it. We'll see you then.